Good morning and welcome to SimWorld today. I am Marsh, and on this Friday, we've got a very special guest, I believe, making their SimWorld today debut. And that is the man, the myth, and very much not the urban legend, Sir Yells. Good morning, Yells, and welcome to the show. Excited to
What's going
finally
on?
get you on.
I am absolutely not an urban urban legend. I am
Well, I
real.
hope not.
I am actually here.
Exactly, you are. You are here in the flesh. This was supposed to be a full college basketball. That's what we're doing on Fridays. Is full college hoops conversation. However, I can't start with college hoops when Chef Curry goes off for 56 points, his ninth 50 plus game since turning 30 years old, the most in SWBA history. 56 as the Warriors rally back and beat the Orlando Magic last night 121-115. They are now 7-1 with 5 straight wins in the Jimmy Butler era. We thought Chef Curry's elite games like this were done. We were wrong last night. 12 three-pointers. Your thoughts on what Chef Curry does and the ceiling right now for the Warriors?
I think he's an incredible player. I guess I'll start with that. Is that I debated about a year back ago. I really fell in love with this game in a totally different way, a greater appreciation. Where I thought to myself, maybe he is the greatest point guard of all time. Then I had to break it in. Maybe he's the best shooting point guard of all time. And then just none of that felt right. It didn't feel right to limit him to just the best shooting point guard or even to call him the greatest shooter of all time. What he's doing at the age that he's at, or where he's leading a team. He's been leading a team, and I know this is your team, Marsh, but he's been leading a
Sure is.
team that really just hasn't been there for quite a few seasons, doing everything that he can with the heroics, the type of shots that he hits, the momentum, what he provides to the league in general, as far as being on top of his PR and just being a great face for the league. He doesn't just make moments. He helps bring in players. He helps GM for the team. What he did last night, though, at this point, it's norm. We haven't seen it in a while, but this is what he's capable of on any night. But he's playing through the game, so I think Curry is just an incredible all around talent. I wonder how long he can play at this pace with that type of shooting, that type of ball handling. He could play forever. But what he did last night, absolutely incredible. I think that's a reminder. And sometimes one single game, I'll say this, and it may sound like hyperbole, and it may just sound like grandeur. One game can put everybody on notice and remind them of what you're capable of, and now the team will, the league will defend the rest of your team totally differently now, based on, oh, that's right, Steph Curry can go get a 50-pointer. Let's make sure that we're guarding him on the perimeter. We're shading. We're picking up on him, and that opens up everybody else's game. Along with some of the moves they made with Jimmy Buckets coming in to defend at many different levels and the deficiencies where the Warriors have, I think this puts them right back in the mix to potentially be scary.
They're a different group. And you mentioned a handful of things. The first, the normalcy of it. Last night I'm watching the game. I'm when the game's on the East Coast and it starts at 7 and not 10 p.m. for me, I'm tuning in. I get about 40, not even 30 of these a season. I'm locked in for these actual not midnight games. And so last night I'm watching. He has 5 points in the first half, and he hits a three-pointer at the buzzer to end the half, which really shifted the momentum of that game. 49-footer. And in the fourth quarter, he is just going on his flurry. He has 22 in the third. And it was so normal that when it got up on the stat screen that he had 46 points, I said, really? He has 46 points right now? Because I wasn't recognizing the fact that he was absolutely cooking. It was just Steph's being Steph. And so the normalcy of his explosions were on full display last night. You talk about the help that he's gotten. I think there's an irony of Curry's career because when he was at his peak powers, right, when he was at his absolute best, when he probably didn't need a supporting cast more than more than Clay, Draymond, and Andre Iguodala, they brought in Kevin Durant. And so for this 3-year window where Steph was, I think, 28, 29, 30, where that is when a basketball player is peaking at their apex. He had another dude peaking at their apex. And so we didn't get to appreciate the all the weight on Steph's shoulders type of season. And so then Kevin Durant leaves, and then we get Curry in his 30s. And when he actually could use a second supporter, he doesn't get the second supporter. So meanwhile, while LeBron James is getting all the love that, well, look at what LeBron's doing in his 30s, in his late 30s, going on 40. No other guy can do this. Steph can't do this right now. Well, LeBron had Anthony Davis. He had Austin Reeves, who's still a very good scorer. And so all the spotlight came on, well, Steph can't do it on his own. He shouldn't be doing it on his own. He's in his mid-30s. The moment they bring in Jimmy Butler, changed everything, right? Steph had four straight 30-point games. Two of them coincided with the arrival of Jimmy Butler. And then last night goes for 56. The irony is when Steph didn't need help, he had it. And when Steph needed help, he didn't have it until right now. And last night was not a good Jimmy Butler game, but Jimmy Butler has completely changed the ceiling of this Warriors team. They have some work to do to try to get up out of the number, to try to get to number 6. Logistically, I don't think they can get further than that. But if I'm an opposing team, obviously I'm biased here, but the Warriors just stepping back, what they bring, they're a scary team, especially if you're Houston or if you're Memphis, Roniel. In the first round, if the Warriors get one of those two teams, they have to feel confident that they could win the series. If they get a Los Angeles, they shouldn't get Oklahoma City because they shouldn't fall to 8. But if they get a Los Angeles or a Denver, that's a different conversation. But the right matchup, this team, I think, still instills fear in who they're going up against.
Let me add this, and also let me apologize for my background. Some people are in the process of moving. We have a few things going on. So no, I don't live in an extended stay or a shed, guys.
Kind of looks like it.
No, to your point, and again, just sometimes when people just look at stats or they look at offensive production, right, or you're looking at defensive production in the term of steals, blocks, rebounds, what have you, you don't get the full picture. And Jimmy Butler's addition is what is going, like as you said, is really going to allow Steph Curry to look very different. Is Steph Curry a great defender? By no means, but the defensive effort that he's had to put in here recently or before the Jimmy Butler's insertion, it takes a little bit off of you offensively. And then on the other end of that veteran presence of knowing where to be and where to move, that's one of the things that Jimmy Butler does not get enough credit for. There's times in games where he just averaged 18, 16, 20 points. You say, hey, I want to take over. He goes to the right spots. He sets the right screens. He makes an offense more fluid. And in a system with Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and obviously what Steve Kerr does, up or down, that spacing and that movement mixed with the defense, the defensive presence is there, being in the right spots, switching everything on the perimeter, allowing Steph Curry some breaks. I think we're going to see probably some more 40 or 50-point games before the season's over for the Warriors as well.
There's a second intelligence, and I'm not saying that none of the other players, but the high-level intelligence that Jimmy Butler has. Jimmy Butler was awful last night statistically. 1 of 7, 5 points. Did not play well. He had 7 assists. That was his good piece. His stats were bad, right? But this is the last thing, I swear, we'll get to actual college hoops. But there was a sequence at the end of the game, a very benign one. The Warriors are up, I think, 4. They just need to get a single possession. It's under a minute left. They bring a double on Steph Curry way out at half court. He gets it over to Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is also at half court. He swings it to the corner to Brandon Pajemski, who actually misses a corner three-pointer. But because of all the shifting that the Orlando Magic had to do, because of 1, Steph Curry going nuclear, and 2, you got a competent number 2 there with the ball who does a little hesitation pass to get to Pajemski. It means Draymond Green can easily get an offensive rebound, gets it back out to Steph Curry, free throws, and they start doing the free throw thing to ice it. That's what Jimmy Butler brings. They did not have that. All right, let's go to college hoops. We had a big game, mostly for the implications of what happened in the final about 5 minutes, and that was Iowa and Michigan, where the story, the headline, is not the fact that Iowa gets a big Big Ten win when they needed it most, but rather that Lamarian Sherwood leaves with an arm injury. He is expected to miss an extended period of time. I would expect we get that duration today here on Friday, as testing is going to be done this morning for the Hawkeyes. Potential player of the year. But Roniel, this is a massive loss. How does this change Iowa's future? Because obviously they're not a championship team without him.
It's going to sound crazy, and that's fine. I'm used to it. But Lamarian Sherwood, I mean, we've seen his numbers: 40-point games, damn near averaging a double double. He possibly the runaway winner for the Player of the Year. We get all of what he is, but last night was just another example. We've seen Iowa be up and down, but what we have also seen from Iowa is great intelligence. We've seen them have high IQ as a basketball club, incredibly high IQ. A lot of what we just talked about when we talk about the Warriors and the SWBA, they're in the right places. They're in the right places to get offensive rebounds. They're on the glass. They push the break. They can play any style of ball. We've seen them play some slug it out games, just mucking it up. So far this season, we've seen them get up and down the court with pace. We've seen them slow it up and say, hey, let's just take intelligent shots. They can dump it down low, but when they need to give it to Sherwood, and there's many times this year where the game did not flow through Sherwood. Sherwood went and got it off the glass. He forced the game in moments and times when he needed to, but other than that offense was flowing. Royden Robinette is a great, intelligent player. He handles the ball, he brings the ball up, he facilitates, but he can also get a bucket at 6'7". Normally he's going to be guarded. Unless they're running a zone, he's going to be guarded by a perimeter player. We saw Dante Feliz last night. If he can continue playing like that, that is going to be huge. He was knocking down buckets in the pick and roll. He was unstoppable. I think the core of what this team is to a casual fan is, say, Lemarian Sherwood, right? We're trained to look for the stars in their production. But what this team really is great coaching, high IQ, good spacing, a really good system. Do I think that they're the odds-on favorite and, number 1, 2, or 3? I know they're ranked number 9 now, but depending on where they'd be seated in Hoopsteria, I think they were a heavy favorite. Do I think they're a heavy favorite? No. But do I think that they can absolutely still accomplish the same feats with this team that they have? Yes.
So here's at risk of sounding now like a casual fan, their ceiling just changed, though. We can talk about Feliz going for 29, I think it was, right? Stacey Van Arsdale going for 22. On its surface, if you just walked away from that game, Lemarian Sherwood uninjured, you say, holy cow, these guys actually have some. The big question mark was always who was going to be number 2, right? Sherwood was going to get his, and he had 14 of 14 in like 25 minutes. 6 of 8 shooting. I mean, he was doing a lot of great things, but he was also doing a lot of what you were just talking about, getting offensive boards, putting them back. It wasn't a lot of get it into the post, let him just beat up on Lorenzo Phenom. It was a lot of him getting engaged in the pick and roll. He did have a couple middies there that were falling for him, but you walk away from that game and say, okay, there's some nice pieces. The problem is Lemarian Sherwood's not walking away from that game, and the ceiling for this team, which you were getting to at the end there, which I agree with, the ceiling just fell off, right? The ceiling used to be all the way up here, right? It's 2 to 3 stories down now. Somebody came in and hit a wrecking ball and knocked the top of it off. If Lemarian Sherwood's not ready to go, here's the benefit, and it was the same exact benefit that we talked about way back at the beginning of the season when DJ Childs was hurt, is the duration of this new SimWorld U season is not as congested as it's been in the past, right? So you've got until April 28th. That is 2 months away. We've got the entire month of March, because we're here on the last day of February. We've got the entire month of April for Lemarian Sherwood to get right. That is, 31... Let's see, January, February, March, that's 31 days, and then it's about 28. So we're about 50, nearly 60 days of recovery time for Lemarian Sherwood. Nearly 7 weeks. I can't imagine that this is a 7 to 8 week injury. And so for that, plus you got the conference championship game, which is going to add a buffer before Hoopsteria starts. I think he's going to be back for Hoopsteria, and when he gets back, you're going to have 2 months of basketball being played by really good basketball players, figuring out how do they operate with the basketball. I think it's not a blessing, but it's a slight blessing in disguise for Iowa, because I think by the time Sherwood gets back, we're going to be ramping up by mid-April, and this team's going to be poised and ready to make a championship type of run with guys having some confidence, having played without their star big man who for so long they've been able to just defer to.
Well, we'll see where they land in seeding on Hoopsteria, and that's where I'll agree with you with the the blessing in disguise, so to speak, because they have time, and that's the beauty of college basketball is that you can make a run at any moment. So where they land in seeding and how easy a route they have, because I agree with you, he's got to make it back. We've seen about this kid's character is that he probably has something to prove as a senior, actual 4-year senior. He's just now exploding onto the scene in this way, so he definitely has a chip on his shoulder. He wants to come back and play. But for me, I still stand by. I agree with you. I think the ceiling is lower. It's definitely not where it was at the moment.
Hmm.
But I do think that this team can absolutely play without Sherwood.
So let's shift to the last topic, which is focusing on the rest of the season. And I think last night maybe shifts your viewpoint. We'll find out here in 1 second. But to you, what's the most impressive, or rather not impressive, interesting conference that we have coming up? Just as a kind of the precursor, you go to the Big 12, where you've got three teams that are 5-1, a fourth team that's 4-2. You go to the ACC, a pair of 5-1 teams, a 3-1 team. You go to the American, a 4-1, a 5-2, a 4-2 at the top. You go to the Big East, three teams in second place at 4-2. You go to the Big 12, Iowa sits on top of it, but one of four teams that are 3-1 and a fifth that's 2-1. So as we hit the almost stretch run, final 2 months of the season, what's the most interesting conference in your opinion?
Yeah, I think the easy one is going to be the Big 12. As you just stated, Texas, Kansas, Dayton, right there. Texas Tech, if they didn't lose last night, right
Yeah.
there. So it's awfully congested. Outside of Texas, it is very hard to say who the next runner-up is in that conference period. And to be totally honest, we've seen Texas play great over their last, 18 games or so. But the beginning, let's not forget the beginning of this season for Texas was abysmal. People had already written them off. You know that quick rush to cast judgment that we have out there. 4 games in, people were asking for coach to be fired. Let's
Right.
not forget that. I'm not going to allow it to fall. Very interesting conference play. Anything can happen if Kansas is able to pull something off in a championship game. Dayton, who's playing exceptionally well, 4-1 out of their last 5. Texas Tech could pull it out. And let's not forget them. Baylor has some big wins. They have not won in some time, but they had big wins early in the season. They are a style contrast for most teams in the Big 12. Then you have Oklahoma, who at any given time, Suno Chaba, Jace Miguez, reminding people of what he is last night. And then Floyd Henderson. It's jam-packed and congested in that conference. But I also want to talk another big conference, and that's the Big 10, with Iowa now sitting down Lamarian Sherwood for a little bit there. Minnesota, who has struggled here recently, but they've got, I love me some DIY, do it yourself. Minnesota is tough. You got D'Angelo Jordan, the super freshman out there. Anytime you have a 6'9" bucket getter, if you think back to Kevin Durant in his days at Texas, that could drastically change the whole field for everyone if he gets hot at the right time. And then you got Maryland and Indiana and Michigan. I mean, the Big Ten, maybe the conference standings is not cementing what I'm saying right now, but those are all very quality teams, and I think they just beat up on one another with no Lamarian Sherwood. So I look at those two, and then if I have time, Marsh, I won't spend long at all.
Take it
But
away.
I know this isn't everyone's sexy conference, but the Mountain West,
Hmm.
UNLV. Right now, maybe I took your spot there. UNLV at 5-1 right now, but Gonzaga's there. San Diego State is a really good team, and I know you love Ireland early in New Mexico.
Sure
in
do.
New Mexico at any point. So Big 12's number one for me. Big 10 comes down, and then Mountain West.
I'm Mountain West. You're there's. I don't think there's a wrong conference right now. I think the only conference that's like generally we think we know it is probably the Pac-12, where UCLA has a 2-game edge on Utah and Cal. So like your interesting conversation is who's number 2, and you got 6 teams that are all within 1 game of one another. But to me, I'm so fascinated in the Mountain West. You have one team that's ranked. It's Gonzaga at number 20. I think San Diego State and New Mexico are capable of being ranked, but clearly SP top 25. These are 14-8, 13-9 teams. Those are really good records. And meanwhile, we've got kind of teams over on the other side where it's like, oh, Michigan State, we got them ranked at 11-9. The track record for San Diego State and New Mexico is actually better than some of the teams, and I talked about this on my podcast, at the tail end of the top 25. They just haven't really gotten the respect for it. I'm super interested in it because you've got UNLV, who's a game over 500 overall, but they walk into Mountain West play, they're 5-1. You've got, again, I talked about New Mexico and San Diego State. St. Mary's is somehow still hanging around. It's a 4-team race, though, with those top 4. It's fascinating to me because there's not a dominant team among them, right? You go to the Pac-12 and you say, well, we've got UCLA. We know that they're the dominant team. You go to the Big 12. You say Texas, that's our top 5 team. You go to the Big East. You've got a top 5 team in Villanova sitting there. The Mountain West has none of that. And I think sometimes that devoid or that void of eliteness can make things uninteresting. I think in the Mountain West case, that void of eliteness makes it super, super captivating of, well, who's going to emerge? Because maybe this changes everything. And honestly, this is what we expected from UNLV at the start of the season. This was, I think Siege had made them a dark horse pick to be the Mountain West champion. This is, they finally are looking like that, right? Nat Hawkins is going off. They're finally looking like this is who we thought the Running Rebels are going to be, and it helps that they get to beat up on Boise State, whose time in the sun is kind of diminished, Colorado State, whose time in the sun never existed, and Nevada, by the way, who won the Mountain West last season, who won 30 games last season, is 7-16. So to me, that I'm very fascinated by the Mountain West as we roll into conference play. All right, that's our show. We're coming back on Monday.
To be fair,
what's that? Go ahead.
Siege is a hater. Anytime y'all tune in, to take it as you will or anything else, he's looking for the hate. He's a hater. I just have to put it out there.
He's a hater. He's the king of the haters club. That's for damn sure. Not the players club, but the player haters club is where Siege is residing on his weekends. All right, that's our show. We're coming back on Monday. We got a big week ahead. We got a big weekend ahead. We do not have an immediate SimWorld prep game, but that's because, of course, The Last Dance starts next week. March 7th is when The Last Dance tips off. All of that action beginning at 6 p.m. We do have an afternoon game, local broadcast tonight. That's Georgia Tech and Louisville. And then the game of the week next week. How about some respect given to Dayton as they and the Longhorns square off on March 6th, next Thursday. Chance at the top of the Big 12 at Dake. That'll be our game of the week. We'll see. Dayton might be sliding into the tail end of that top 25. It could be a game of the week not featuring a top 25 team, but featuring massive implications next week. That's our show. We're back on Monday with Rick Blaze to dive in and catch things on fire. We appreciate Yells making his SimWorld Today debut. We appreciate you tuning into us every single day. We're back next week on SimWorld TV, the only place you can see the game, be the game.
This has been a presentation of SimWorld Sports.